Mira, René, Sargento va para allá.
Oh, qué bueno.
No
Voy a ver.
sabía.
Lo dijo Verde, pero ella
Well,
decía
thanks.
6:30.
Recording over there.
Oh, yo conocí a
Alright, so thank you for joining us today. We're gonna be looking at a brand new book this week here at Positive Action Ministry.
two
It's called the
chapters.
Book of Haggai. It's only 2 chapters, but it's a very powerful book. I picked it because it was short and we were gonna do another kind of format, but I was pleasantly surprised. I had no idea what it was about, and when I read it and started researching, I really liked it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta look up there. Okay, so the prophet Haggai, the strength to build. The objective is that students will understand the historical and theological context of Haggai. So what time frame was he in? Where does he fit with the other prophets? Students will be able to explain the main message of Haggai and what it means. So you guys are gonna figure that out. And then we're also gonna know that the students will reflect on how the message of Haggai came to be, you can apply that because that's the take home message, right? We always want to know how is this going to pertain to myself. So we have a little warm up activity, and the warm up activity is we're going to
Si se cae de cabeza.
just in your life right now. Just in your life right now. What is that very important project that you might be working on right now?
Me?
Anyone?
My wife.
Family.
You're working on your wife, and how is that project coming along, Babu?
My what?
Your wife
You
project.
said weight or wife?
I said wait.
Oh,
Uh,
your weight then.
I guess it's a subsection of life, right?
So that's a project, okay, how's that going?
This sucks, man. Horrible. Well, you gotta go with it.
All right, so maybe it's time to re-examine the plan and make a little bit of an adjustment there. Anybody else have a long-term project or short-term project?
Family.
My son.
I think family.
Okay, Jonathan, go ahead.
That's my
Your
project
project
is
to
family.
make more families?
Make more family, make
Man,
Raise
good
children. It's a good
children of
good
God.
man.
Uh-huh.
So it's a
Children of power.
They don't need to be woken up to go to class.
it's gonna be a long
That's
gonna be
a
a long
long-term
journey.
project.
A long burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eddie had raised his hand. Eddie had raised his hand.
Well, I have 2 things that I have to decide now that I'm gonna retire. You guys know that I'm always, I
Wait,
never
you're gonna
stop.
retire?
That's
I
news.
will, but I don't know when.
Oh.
Wealth, I'm always working in my wealth, but
No,
that's a
no.
normal thing, but I'm considering if I should go either back to get another degree or to get a PhD, because I don't wanna be home sitting down, so. I have
So
to,
education might be one you're saying?
yes,
Okay. So that's good, right? We have projects of self-improvement and we have projects for the future. So these are the wonderful things that we wanna always grow upon,
why
so.
you pick Jin and Yang for spirituality, that's weird.
Try to make the phone.
Oh, I didn't make that.
Ah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the historical context. Ralph, do you wanna read there under historical context?
538 BC, Cyrus, king of Persia, allowed the South Jews to return to Jerusalem after 70 years in captivity.
Daniel time.
2 years later, 536 BC, construction of the temple began. Led by Zerubbabel, the work stopped after 2 years. 534 BC, after 14 years of neglect, work on the temple resumed in 520 BC and was finished 4 years later in 516.
Okay.
Wow.
And this is from the book of, that's some information from, so right away, who was one of Haggai's contemporaries?
Daniel.
Zerubbabel.
Zerubbabel,
Zerubbabel, who else?
Joshua too.
I mean Cyrus is king.
How about
Joshua.
Daniel?
Let me give you
Are
something.
those
I'm
there?
trying to click on that, but.
Jesse, let me give you a historical context.
Darío.
That when we saw the play, when we actually find, because in the Bible talks about Cyrus, right? But in history it also, remember Rene? It talks about, but Cyrus was a general, wasn't it?
Yeah, Darío.
Yeah, that he was a general.
And maybe he was a king and the emperor. The other king that they mentioned was the emperor.
Yes,
Because he was the king of kings.
that's right.
But Pastor, but
Okay.
the Joshua they mentioned there is not the Joshua.
No, of course,
Right.
that's the priest. That's what the priest.
This one.
So was that in the time of Daniel too, Genesis? Because it's talking about
Okay,
70
good.
years.
Yes, it could be, but maybe Daniel, I don't know if he's
We'll
still
reopen,
alive.
but let me
there,
talk
because
about
Daniel
this for a
was
minute.
taken to Babylon on 586. So this is
Okay.
520 already.
So
Yeah,
we
you
see,
mentioned-
this is just a short, like, where are we in the time zone here?
After 70 years, Daniel.
Yeah, all the way to the
He
top.
was alive.
Okay, so if we start here, we see in the book of Ezra is the first year of Cyrus the king, and he
Okay.
makes the proclamation that they can return. Okay, so we see that Ezra's during this time, and then if you keep going through here, you see that Haggai happens in the same time as Ezra, actually. And if you look, if you ever read Ezra, if you stop at after chapter 3 or 4, like Haggai should fit in there,
Oh,
and then it
okay.
goes back to Ezra.
Oh.
It kind of like they both should really belong together.
Yeah, but at the same
Let me
time.
ask you a question.
It was Ezra in the kingdom of the north and Haggai in the kingdom of Judah because they were split.
I did not read anything like
That might be the case.
So then we go into Haggai, and then Zechariah is another one at the same time too.
Yeah.
That was in that time zone. And then finally, at the end of Ezra, where it's about 458 BC or 457 BC, then we have Nehemiah, like
Wow.
15 years later. And we all know what did Nehemiah help build?
The wall.
The wall. So where they worked, Haggai and Ezra worked on building the temple.
Yeah.
Nehemiah's gonna work on building the wall. So it was a little bit later, but they're all around the same kind of time.
But that reading this chapter and then doing the commentary about this thing, it's like if you don't read the
Not a good picture, right?
if you don't read the commentary, then you will not really understand what's going on here because
That's
they say a lot of stuff that they infer from the book, but they're not there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why we wanted to get some context on this. So Brandon, would you like to read who was Haggai?
Haggai was the first among the
Exilic.
Say like mine.
minor prophets. Of the 12 minor prophets, the first 9 spoke before Judah was carried away captive, exiled to Babylon. The last 3 minor prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, each spoke those who returned from the 70-year exile.
Okay, yeah, so we see that Haggai 1 took place on August 29, 520, around there. It's very specific about who was the king and who was the year, so. Okay, so what do you think stopped the work for 14 years? So we saw that 2 years was done and then they stopped. And what happened? Why did they stop? Eddie raised his hand first, but we always want to allow others besides the pastor to answer first.
Is it a war?
It was not a war. Eddie?
If I'm not mistaken, I'm reading the book of Haggai.
Yeah.
They were concerned of building their homes first instead of building the temple.
Well,
That was the
well,
concern.
didn't God tell Haggai why you live so comfortable and everything? What about my home? Why you
Exactly,
build it?
that's the whole thing.
So we're gonna look.
5 words you pronounce wrong 2 years before your brain starts shutting down. Dementia is now known as type 3
Hey, this is PH and welcome to another episode of Good Bible Knowledge with PhD. In this set of videos, I want to answer common questions about the Bible in a fun and creative way. I hope these videos will be helpful in your own spiritual journey in Jesus. Let's get started. Who is Haggai the prophet? When the first group of Israelites returned from the exile to the Promised Land, they faced a great challenge of rebuilding a nation that had fallen into disrepair for 70 years. And at the same time, they were facing an external threat from the surrounding enemies. And it is during this time that God raised up a prophet, Haggai, to bring a message of hope. In Ezra chapter 3, when the Israelites had finished the foundation of the temple, the priests with trumpets and cymbals sang to the Lord, "He is good, and his love to Israel endures forever." And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord. But many of the older family heads who had seen the former temple wept aloud when they saw the foundation. The elders yearned for a temple like Solomon's, a temple that once was the envy of the world, that was overlaid with solid gold and precious stones. And this temple was a mere shadow of the former glory. As resistance and opposition grew from both the local people and Persia, one by one, the people began to return to their own homes, and by the 8th day of the 3rd month, work on the temple had completely ceased. And for 18 years, the temple lay in ruins, with the people.
So what happened is the people started comparing the foundation of the new temple with the old temple. That's the older people that still remember Solomon's temple, or people that heard about it, because it was legendary. Like, oh, one time we had this temple, and it was like, you know, people made things even bigger and shinier and brighter than they were. And so the people kind of got disappointed. Oh, this is like, so they kind of like let it go. So that's the reason that they kind of stopped working on the temple.
So how many times?
Saying, perhaps.
How many times?
It was rebuilt.
No, they destroyed. How many times they destroyed? Well, two.
They destroyed one on. This temple would be destroyed about
3 times, right?
Yeah, 3 times they were destroyed. Okay. Because then the Roman destroyed in 54, 60 around there. In Nero time. Then this one is destroyed. What was his name, Renee? Year 1 something. Remember, before Christ, that the guy did the thing, or the pig, he roasted the pig.
Oh, by Epiphanius?
Yeah.
All right, what do you think when they talk about the paneled houses? That you all live in your paneled
Yeah,
houses?
I mean,
Raise your hand. Ralph, raise his hand first.
God was complaining to Haggai, you know, oh, well, you live in the panel house, and I mean, you live comfortable. You forget, you know, you forgot about my house.
Very
It's
good.
time for you to go back, you know, and do it.
So they're talking about excesses. They're talking about, maybe they even had multiple, because maybe you have more than one house even.
Yeah.
They were being selfish, just thinking about themselves, right? So we, of course, we have to know that we need to be humble, right? And live within our means. Are the people progressing monetarily? Why or why not? Renee.
Well, they even have 2 houses, so apparently that's an indication of wealth, so they were doing good.
There is, Brandon?
There's a particular verse that's written, you're putting money in your purse that had holes in it, so it falls out.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
That's right.
It also said that they sow much, but they reap little, right? And it says that the priorities are not set on God. And that the wages go into the bags with the holes. So they actually were having some trouble. They might have nice houses, but they're not living la vida loca.
Well, they were like.
They were not good stewards.
They were bitter because they were in exile, you know, remember that, that's why they were not happy.
Well, it tells them why these things are happening to them in here too. They're missing out on blessing. This says that they're missing out on blessing. What punishment did God send down to them in here? What punishment did God send down to them?
Didn't they say
Hannah.
that like it wasn't gonna be like a dry?
Yes,
not gonna
very
rain?
good, perfect. They said that he will hail the dew and there would be a drought, okay? So what crops withered when he said that? The grain? Or like the 3 top crops, like the most important crops for them?
Potatoes.
No, wheat or grain? What else? Something very important.
Oats, olive
Oil, and what's the other one?
wine.
Very good, perfect. So he went after the things they cared about the most, probably. So they're having this drought, and it's because they're putting their priorities where they're not supposed to be.
You know what is interesting, teacher, that to this day the salvimos.
Even today, they're very precious. Yeah.
Yeah, and they for the Jewish
Olives?
Oh,
For Jewish people, yeah.
for the Jewish people. Yeah.
So when Ezra said, God says this, and this is what you're punished, and this is what you're doing, how do the people react?
Well, there was some listening at first, but then they did because they started building the house.
Yeah, so they actually, the Joshua and, they heeded the word and began the work. Okay, so they listened, right? So he brought them back. So the final tips and takeaways, Jonathan, do you want to read?
Sure. Post
exilic return and rebuilding of the temple. Haggai is called to prioritize the temple's reconstruction over personal comfort, the promise of God's presence and blessing in response to obedience, the importance of prioritizing spiritual responsibility.
Yep, so this is what you could take away from this, right? When you set up your priorities or your projects, like we all talked about earlier today, make sure you place God in that project. Make sure that he's in the forefront to give you the goals, you know, that you want to raise the baby to be a good man. You already know that you're going to put this in God's hands, that you want to get to a healthy weight. You're going to put this in God's hands, and all these kind of projects. It's important to put that and not to be selfish about your own things, to always put God in the forefront and give God the good, the first, like they say, the first fruit, and not like, let me build my house first, make it all nice, and then whatever I have left over, give it to God.
Yeah,
All right.
so, if you read the investigation about this whole chapter, it says that when he went on, talking to the king, and he was worried about when he's gonna tell the king that he wanna go back over there, right?
You mean Nehemiah?
No, Haggai. That he said that he spoke to the king, and then he even went with the escort. He even that I don't know where they got all
I
that
think
stuff.
you're gonna
What
confuse
chapter did
that
they-
Nehemiah.
Yeah.
No, well, I read about Haggai, man, and then he had all this commentary about that stuff. That when I don't know why they describe it. They
You
describe
took maybe out of the commentary. Remember, commentaries are commentary, so you don't know.
that it was
exactly.
very the king saw that very favorable, and then he even given an escort to go back to Jerusalem.
That happened with Nehemiah when he gave him wood and horses and stuff. So I'm not sure if they're not even sure if he was an exile.
That's going to the chapter up here.
No, but I'm talking about the investigation they
Yeah,
do about it.
investigation. Don't assume that that's true.
Thank you. Ernie.
Somebody has said what, he's still talking about nonsense.
Bagel. I gotta stop
That
there.
That Lala gagging. I think you guys are ready. Okay, guys,
Well,
thank you.
Church early, but we still have positive news.
Oh, sorry, I didn't
Where's,
know.
so Renee, please share your